She had a stroke on the kitchen floor. She wasn't breathing.
The paramedics' main aim is to preserve life, that the patient stays alive.
It's not until much later on that anybody is thinking that there are suspicious circumstances.
The fascinating thing about forensic toxicology is that it tells the truth. A perpetrator is not able to hide.
A lot of people say you never know what goes on behind closed doors. Is it murder? Is it suicide? Is it natural causes? Trying to put this together would be an absolute nightmare, but the answers are hidden within this crime scene.
Allegheny County Dispatch. Receive a frantic call.
Allegheny County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Hello? Hello?
Okay, slow down.
Please, I think my wife's having a stroke.
His wife wasn't breathing, and he was absolutely panic-stricken.
Okay, calm down. What's your name?
My name is Bob Ferrante. Oh, please hurry.
Okay, just hang on the line, Bob. They're coming.
Jesus, sweetheart, please.
You could hear him talking to her. Jesus, sweetheart, breathe. Don't do this to me.
Okay, Bob, calm down. You think she might be having a stroke?
Yes, she's been having these episodes for the past...
Okay, listen.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Are you with her now?
Yes, right in front of her.
The woman is Dr. Autumn Klein.
Autumn was a 41-year-old healthy woman. She was known to eat really, really well and take care of herself. So it was really quite a shock.
She's just staring and can't answer.
You say she's just staring off. Is she able to talk at all?
No, she cannot. She's not responding to me. She has this sort of like apatoid. It's all stiff. Honey, sweetheart, are you okay?
I'm sending the paramedics to help you. Okay, I'm making sure help is on the way.
Oh, God, help me, God, help me.
Paramedics arrive within minutes. Autumn is lying on the kitchen floor.
The main concern is preservation of life. This woman was young, healthy, with no obvious injury. It was really unusual to find someone in this state. Paramedics would do everything they can to try and ensure that the patient stays alive.
My wife's trying to get pregnant again.
Was she getting injections or?
All kinds of drugs, yeah, all kinds of drugs.
So she's on several different medications right now.
Oh, God, I can't think. Jesus. She's having a difficult time breathing. Oh, God.
Paramedics move Autumn into the ambulance as Bob calls her parents and a friend to watch their 6-year-old daughter.
The paramedics, their home was less than a quarter of a mile away from a major trauma center in Pittsburgh and the hospital where Autumn worked. The medical personnel working on her very quickly realized who she was and that she was one of their own. Autumn was working with women who were trying to get pregnant or were pregnant and also had neurological diseases that they needed to try to balance to be able to have a baby. She was incredibly well loved in her medical field. They made extreme life-saving measures to try to help her. By the point where she had arrived, she had clamped up, her hands had closed.
Autumn is unresponsive.
Doctors are unsure why Autumn's had such a strange medical episode. It's really important to learn everything you can about her, to find out why has this happened.
They weren't sure if she was having a stroke, if she was having some kind of heart situation. There was even talk about there being an electrical brainstorm in her brain. They needed to start doing the tests that were necessary to try to identify what was happening. One of the residents put the central line in.
The blood appears to be really red, which is an indication of high oxygenation.
Bright red blood is clinically a red flag. The cells are unable to absorb the oxygen that is passing around the body because they've been blocked, and that causes the blood to go that cherry red color.
That was a clue to them that her body was having some kind of reaction to something that was in it.
Blood samples were sent for toxicology analysis at the hospital.
Bob arrives at the hospital as Autumn's respiratory system worsens. She's put on life support while her family wait for more news.
Over the few days that Autumn was in the hospital, it was really hard for her friends and family to figure out what it was that was causing her to be so gravely ill. The physicians who were treating her had done every test that they could think of. They'd done brain imaging, they'd done heart imaging, and there was absolutely nothing that they found that was causing her to have such grave symptoms. By April 20th, Autumn had shown no signs of brain function in any way, and it was at that point where the family decided that they would remove life support measures from her.
Desperate for answers, Autumn's parents pin their hopes on the pathologist.
They performed the autopsy on Autumn the next day. They were unable to find anything that they believe could have been the reason why she died.
Awaiting the hospital's blood results, Autumn's body is released to the funeral home.
The fact that Autumn died would have been a huge loss, not only for family members, but also for the medical community. She was a very promising young lady with a lot to offer, and her untimely death would have had a huge impact on the community at the time.
A number of her patients were devastated at her death. Autumn really took a lot of time with her patients and got to know them, spent, hours with them trying to help them. She was able to help them to be able to carry a baby to term, which was unexpected given their condition.
As the community begins to grieve, the blood results send shockwaves through the hospital.
It says that Autumn looks like she had cyanide in her blood. Having cyanide in your blood is incredibly rare and quite shocking. As a crime scene manager with 25 years experience, I've never had a case like this. And it was immediately turned into a police investigation. Is it suicide? Is it an accidental cause of death? Or has she been poisoned with cyanide?
Following the sudden death of 41-year-old neuroscientist Dr. Autumn Klein, Pittsburgh police have an unusual case on their hands. The hospital's blood tests have come back with a positive result for cyanide.
All suspicious deaths are subject to a second post-mortem examination. Police would like to have access to the body for a considerable period of time to reveal any other potential symptoms or any other injuries, bruising that may help to improve the investigation. In a case like this, the main areas that might be considered is, has the cyanide been injected or has it been ingested orally?
But with Autumn's death now deemed suspicious, it's already too late for forensic examination.
When the hospital personnel realized that Autumn had tested positive for cyanide, they immediately called the medical examiner's office to relay those findings to them. But her body was already released, and Bob, he had her picked up by the funeral home, and she was cremated 2 days later.
It meant that there was no further evidence that could be obtained from her. It's a crazy situation. Further investigations needed, and her body's now been cremated within just a couple of days of her death.
The only lead investigators have are 3 blood samples. They're sent to the lab to determine the levels of cyanide, as detectives look into Autumn's movements.
The first order of business really was to determine how she could have been exposed to cyanide.
It leads to a number of questions that I would want answers to. Where has she obtained the cyanide from? Is it self-inflicted, or has somebody injected her or fed her cyanide through some food products? Is it innocent contamination? So has she picked up something that's got cyanide on it?
The investigation begins where Autumn collapsed.
The police always talk about the golden hour, which is the first few hours of an investigation where there's prime evidence at that scene. But when you're starting a police investigation 3 days after you've kind of lost that golden hour, and any evidence that might have been at that scene has potentially been lost. So you really have to search well to find any traces. My forensic strategy would be around trying to formulate some kind of idea about the lifestyle of the people that lived there, how they lived, what they ate. You cannot rush an examination like this.
Before Bob and his daughter go to stay with family, detectives speak with him to build a picture of Autumn's life.
Autumn grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. She was an only child to parents who were a little bit older when they had her. She excelled as a student. She was always very much into the sciences. Was going to be a medical doctor. So when she went to medical school, she did that. She got a medical degree. Autumn met Robert when she had to go work at his lab as she was studying for her PhD. Robert Ferrante started out his career as a neuro researcher. He was known to be studying diseases like Lou Gehrig's disease and Huntington's disease. He had established his own lab in Boston. He was 23 years older than her. She called him Bob and became attracted to him based on his intellect. She thought he was incredibly smart. He was quite charming, and they hit it off very, very quickly. He mentioned once that when she showed up at his lab, she was wearing ripped jeans and had a pink streak in her hair, which I always thought was great.
Before long, the two scientists lived and worked together.
They were very close. He referred to them as peas in a pod. They very much enjoyed good meals and conversation. They talked a lot about work. Their work was incredibly important to both of them.
In 2001, Bob and Autumn got married in a small candlelit ceremony.
They lived at his family home outside of Boston, and they remained there for several years. They had their first child. She loved her daughter. Even though she had a very pressure-filled career, she focused very much on her daughter. She would take her to work with her, and her daughter would lay under the desk. She would color and play games and things like that, even just to have that little bit of time to spend together, because she was gone a lot because of her position.
Autumn became known for her work in an untouched area of medical research.
She had a very close following with both her patients and the physicians she worked with. She was traveling all over the world to specifically work with women who were suffering from neurological diseases. Autumn ran the women's neurology program at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Bob was able to transfer his funding and had his lab at one of the buildings on Pitt's campus.
The family bought a stately 5-bedroom property in the historic district of the city, less than 2 miles from the hospital, and appeared very happy.
With a case like this, there are several hypotheses that you could consider. In any death, is it murder? Is it suicide? Or is it an accidental cause of death?
The initial thought was, how could she have been exposed to such a toxic chemical? The initial thought was that it could have happened at work in one of her neurology labs.
A police trawl of CCTV footage indicates that Autumn left her work fit and healthy.
Autumn had worked the entire day. What they found was that she had no active projects or working with cyanide in any capacity for her research.
Detectives rule out Autumn's death as accidental. They use the CCTV to timeline her last known movements.
That video surveillance to show her coming down off the elevator and off the escalator at the end of her night. Autumn left work late. She walked home because it was a really short distance away. And when she arrived there, Robert heard the back door open. She came inside.
And then within half an hour, 40 minutes, her husband is calling 911 saying that she's collapsed at home. That's a really short timeline.
Investigators need to know what happened within those 40 minutes.
Detectives needed to rule out that Autumn might have killed herself.
Has she actually taken the cyanide herself because she wants to commit suicide? She wants to end her life.
Detectives talked to Autumn's loved ones, her friends and her colleagues. They traveled to Boston to do that. They traveled to Baltimore, and they interviewed everybody that they could think of.
Autumn's friends tell detectives she was passionate, ambitious, and loved being a mother.
She'd been planning trips. She'd actually talked with her cousin about that.
Autumn and Bob also had plans to extend their family.
Autumn and Robert had talked about having another child, and they planned for it. They tried for years, including in vitro fertilization treatments, repeatedly that were unsuccessful. Having seen so many specialists, Ferrante had talked about the potential of using creatine to help her to be more fertile and to be able to get pregnant.
Autumn and Bob had been texting about it just hours before she collapsed.
He had been urging Autumn to take it for months. He'd ordered it into his lab for her. And it was really a big part of their relationship at that point. And so by looking at those future plans, they were able to establish that she was not suicidal.
Detectives speculate on the last remaining hypothesis: murder.
There were questions about who would have wanted to harm Autumn, why anyone would want to harm her. She was so well loved that it was really a question of how anybody could want harm to come to her.
The toxicologist report from Autumn's blood samples is ready.
Cyanide has highly lethal effects on the human body. And in short terms, it starves the cells in the body of oxygen and kills people often within minutes. The textbook definition of a lethal dose is something over 3 milligrams per liter. And in Autumn's case, the concentration was 3.4 milligrams per liter, which is an enormous concentration of cyanide and far, far greater than anything she may have accidentally picked up from somewhere. In my mind, there can be no other explanation than that she was deliberately poisoned.
It ultimately turns the investigation into a murder investigation.
With a murder case now on their hands, police declare the family home a crime scene.
The crime scene technicians were looking for things that might show evidence of cyanide. They took Autumn's hairbrush, that there could be evidence of the toxin in her hair. The vacuum cleaner, looking at like the broom and dustpan, could it have been something that had spilled in the house?
You would search the bins, you would search any areas where there looks like there's been disturbance and any signs that someone might have removed items from a crime scene.
They also looked through their medications. The creatine that Autumn had been taking for fertility was also a prime target of theirs.
The CSIs found no cyanide within that house. It can be quite difficult putting together a case when you don't have the murder weapon. You have to widen your search.
In the couple's office, they seized personal devices, diaries, and financial records.
One interesting thing that was found was shredded pieces of paper in the shredder machine. So as a matter of course, the contents of that will be seized and pieced together. It's a huge task not knowing if there's anything important in there or not. But in this type of investigation, you're searching for any clues possible. When you've got very little other evidence to go on, you really do have to try and see if anything might be relevant to a case. Trying to put this together would be an absolute nightmare, but it's got to be done. You don't know if there's anything worthwhile in here, but there may well be, so it's really important to try and piece things together, which is a bit like doing a jigsaw, but with 10,000 pieces, and you don't even know what you're looking for. The best way to search through something like this is pick out stuff that definitely looks like it's from the same source. So these have got blue on them, so I'm just going to pull out the bits that have blue on them, and then the bits that have obviously dark blue pen where something's been scribbled out. And that looks like it might say Robert. Might get some good results, but it does take a long time.
As forensics piece everything together, they look at Autumn's diary and get an intimate insight into her life.
I am not sure where to go from here. I just know that I am incredibly unhappy. I just feel like something is missing in my life. I think that thing missing is love.
The picture-perfect marriage Bob has painted immediately falls under scrutiny.
Investigators were able to use emails to try to establish what it was their relationship was, what it was like in the days, weeks, and months leading up to her death. Throughout their marriage, Autumn had complained to her close friends and loved ones that Ferrante had been controlling. He was a little bit standoffish when family would visit. He had a reputation for being a little bit of, I guess, a know-it-all. And sometimes that would rub people the wrong way. You know, on her drive home from work, he would call her multiple times to figure out where she was. And her answer would always be, I'm 5 minutes further down the road than the last time you called. Even little things like at their home, if she left a teacup on the counter, he'd get angry.
Francis was described as a controlling person, and we can see through the way that the relationship was playing out that control was there.
Detectives knew a little bit about some of the relationship problems and Autumn's concerns. They found an email in which Autumn said to a friend and colleague of hers, I think I'm in trouble, in that she was referencing Ferrante's jealousy that she had seen over the last several months.
Raising alarm bells, detectives look for further lines of inquiry.
It's really important for the police in an investigation like this to go back to what was first seen at that scene when the paramedics first arrived.
Something that was really strange to the paramedics was that Bob immediately said to them, you should take her to Shadyside, which is another local hospital. He said, that's where her folks are. Her folks are there. And the paramedics were like, we're in the middle of a medical crisis. We're going to take her to the hospital that's local.
Concerns grow around Bob's behavior.
There were several elements that cast suspicion. During those 3 days where she was kept alive at the hospital, Bob was already talking about her in the past tense, saying things like she was such a good wife. And it was really weird to Autumn's family, who heard him speaking in that way.
Then, doctors tell detectives of some of Bob's demands.
The fact that her husband didn't want an autopsy and pushed for cremation within several days of her death would instantly raise my suspicions, because he wants rid of the body. Therefore, there's no forensic evidence possible. The first person who, in my mind, would be a crime suspect would be her husband.
Robert Ferrante is suspected of poisoning his wife, 41-year-old neuroscientist, Dr. Autumn Klein.
On the surface, this relationship seemed like a very normal family relationship, but you never know what goes on behind closed doors.
By combing through Autumn's personal history, those emails and text messages, and interviewing her friends and family, investigators learned that Autumn had been unhappy in her marriage.
Controlling relationships are all based around a hierarchy. When Autumn and Francis got together first, there was a power dynamic in that relationship. She was a student, he was the supervisor, he was the man forging ahead in his career, had already probably reached the heights of it. So Francis would be at the top of that hierarchy. He is the most important person in the relationship. She is below him in that hierarchy. When that starts to get messed up and things start to change, that's when things can get really quite dangerous in a relationship.
Although on the surface he was helping Autumn with her fertility, the digital breakthrough offers a very different perspective.
The biggest source of tension in Autumn and Ferrante's marriage was very much the notion of her wanting to have a second child and him not.
I hate to say it, Bob, but through this entire mess, you have not been there for me.
He had spoken to other people about it and talked about basically that he was too old to be a new father again. People would mistake him for the grandfather.
But for Autumn, her dreams of having a second child were paramount.
He may appear to be encouraging her in this dream to have another child, but really, he was starting to lose control of Autumn.
I realize now I have been alone in this entire emotional journey.
She'd actually talked with her cousin that although she very much wanted to have another child, she had become frustrated with Ferrante, that he wasn't helping her enough, that he didn't care about her fertility treatments. And she was at a point where she was talking about leaving him.
I don't know where I want to go from here. I don't know what else to say, Bob.
After 12 years of marriage, they appear to reach breaking point.
There were reports from Autumn's family members that she had been contemplating moving out of the family home and had plans to do it the next summer. There was an email.
I don't know where things are going to go, and you may not like what you hear, but I think it is about time we talked.
Autumn is actually planning a separation. So now there is a very different dynamic there. He's not as powerful as he used to be. For Ferrante, this is what we call the trigger event. How dare you leave me?
Investigators don't necessarily need a motive, but having evidence of marital discord and frustration over pregnancy, all of those things contribute to motivation and the reasons why Ferrante could be suspected of killing her.
As the evidence builds around him, detectives receive alarming news.
This looks like potentially a letter. The intelligence from this kind of letter is quite important, which could be fed back into the police teams.
Written after Autumn's death, the letters were basically goodbye letters. There was some discussion whether or not they might have even been goodbye letters relative to a potential threat of suicide, that Ferrante was looking to kill himself.
Ferrante is declared a high-risk wanted man. Armed with an arrest warrant, police fly to Florida.
When a partner kills another partner, the emotion that they feel immediately post-killing is not remorse or shame or guilt or even sorrow. It's relief. They've got their revenge. And now they've got to protect themselves from the repercussions of what they've done, because this man wants to get away with it.
Police encircle the address, but Ferrante isn't there. The digital forensic team traces his phone.
When a suspect has been identified, it's really important to look at anything else that's linked to that suspect. In this case, the suspect was Autumn's husband. So ideally, you would like to be searching his place of work and also his car. There's huge challenges in examining a vehicle, especially several days after the incident has been declared a crime. There could have been a lot of evidence that's been removed from that vehicle, so it can create a lot of challenges. When you're searching a car, you're really looking for anything that looks out of place, anything that shouldn't be in the car or appears to be hidden in the car. You'd be searching under the seats, in the glove box, and in the boot area.
Investigators found a laptop, and they also found a USB drive in the trunk.
Computer equipment and USBs would have to be preserved correctly when removed from the vehicle, so they'd be bagged and removed from the scene. It's quite unusual to leave your laptop in a car, and USB drives, especially in the boot of a car, which tends to suggest that these were potentially hidden away from the police. Prior to sending them off for digital forensics, they might well get some fingerprints on the screen of the laptop and DNA potential on the actual keys on the laptop. So it's kind of looking as to the most keys that are used potentially. So you wouldn't necessarily use the top keys on the laptop, but you'd use the space bar and the return key quite a lot, and a lot of the letters. So I'm just going to take some swabs from some of these areas. So literally just wet a swab and run it over the surface. Sometimes with the pointy swabs you can kind of get down into the grooves of the keys, which helps to pick up any residual DNA. They need to be downloaded to see what items have been saved on the USB drive and what internet searches have been undertaken.
While waiting on the results, detectives speak to Autumn's colleagues.
At the point where Autumn was killed, her career was very much on the upswing. She was a sought-after speaker at medical conferences. She had established this women's neurology program and was really at the peak of her career. Ferrante, who'd been doing the work he had for decades, was not the star in the relationship anymore. There was jealousy of how her career was going.
That would have caused problems for him. If she's doing better than him in her career, that is a threat. If she's starting to look as if she's not quite as interested in him as she used to be, maybe he's thinking he's not as attractive as he used to be, this is the melting pot for real problems.
Ferrante's digital footprint reveals a growing pattern of jealousy.
Ferrante suspected, without reason, that she had been cheating on him. And he confronted her in emails about it, and he wasn't willing to accept her explanations that they were just friends. So much so that he even looked for a divorce attorney in Pittsburgh.
When Ferrante's accused Autumn of having an affair, he's imagining that there's going to be a separation. He was starting to lose control of Autumn, and research shows a controlling person the most dangerous people to be in a relationship with, and especially if you start to say you want to leave them.
Investigators get a call from his attorney.
The attorney wanted him to be able to turn himself in, but the detectives and prosecutor wouldn't allow it, and so they had to figure out where he was, and they did. Eventually, they ended up arresting him on the side of a highway in West Virginia. Ferrante was taken into custody. because of the potential suicide letters that had been found shredded in the home. They kept him in protective custody and wearing a suicide smock.
With Ferrante under close surveillance, CSIs leave no stone unturned.
It's really important in a police investigation to try and find the murder weapon, whether it be a knife or a gun or something like that. Whereas in a poisoning case, it's slightly different because you need to find the source of that poison.
Cyanide is not freely available, so it's restricted access, so only people with legitimate reasons to be able to purchase it. So normally laboratories that are undertaking research would be able to purchase cyanide.
Detectives went to Ferrante's lab at the University of Pittsburgh. There they searched his office. They searched a safe that they found within his office, and they also searched the lab where he conducted his research.
Within the lab, there was a container labeled potassium cyanide.
Forensics securely fast-track it to the lab.
On the top of the desk was a receipt for cyanide, which he had overnighted just a couple days before Autumn died. And instead of ordering it through the traditional grant-based funding that they would use, he put it on a purchasing card for the university, which was unusual because he had no active projects in his lab that would have required that drug. This discovery was a huge moment in the investigation.
Cyanide is a hugely toxic chemical, very rarely used. It's incredibly suspicious. This looks like this belongs to our killer. But there's a question that I would want answers to. How has she become poisoned with cyanide? How has that been ingested?
Pittsburgh police look back to the crime scene.
As the detectives put their case together, they recall specifically that the paramedics saw a Ziploc bag, which Bob said was creatine that Autumn had been using for fertility treatments. That was the key to the case.
Pittsburgh police have Robert Ferrante in custody, suspected of murdering his wife, neuroscientist Autumn Klein.
When the paramedics first arrived, they stated that they remember seeing a bag of white powder on the kitchen worktop, and Ferrante stated that this was creatine.
Detectives refer back to their evidence to investigate how he may have administered the poison.
Also, a witness in Ferrante's lab described to investigators that he had seen his boss acting strangely, including at one point mixing creatine in the lab in small bottles to take home. Also, the text messages in which Ferrante referenced the creatine that Autumn had been using for fertility treatments, they were able to link that with the paramedics. They wondered whether that was the method with which the cyanide was delivered to Autumn through that creatine.
Police believe Ferrante exploited his wife's dreams of having a second child, encouraging her to drink the poison, disguised as a way to help her become pregnant.
The lethal dose is around 5 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So for someone like myself, a definitely lethal dose would be around 400 milligrams, which is precisely the amount of chemical I have in this little vial here.
On further investigation, it was found that 8.3 grams of potassium cyanide was missing from one of the pots that was taken from the lab.
Over 20 times the lethal dose is unaccounted for. The digital forensic team reports one more damning find.
They recovered Ferrante's Google search history. Among the searches that he conducted in the days leading up to and after Autumn's death included symptoms for cyanide poisoning, how to detect cyanide poisoning in an autopsy, and ultimately how to erase my Google search history. They believed that that was a linchpin in showing that it was premeditated.
Police have all they need to charge Ferrante with his wife's murder.
In most cases, there are levels of planning before these homicides. It looks like he followed the typical path of a controlling killer who planned the demise of their partner. And being a medical doctor, he's not going to use the usual methods of, like shooting or strangling her or stabbing her. He's going to be far more underhand and far more cunning. Not many people can get hold of cyanide. But as well, if you add on to that, he had the medical knowledge to be able to describe the symptoms of cyanide poisoning as something else. Because this man wants to get away with it.
"18 months after Autumn's sudden death, Robert Ferrante stands trial.
Over a 25-year career covering criminal justice, I have never had a poisoning. Each day, the courtroom was packed. Every media outlet was there.
The courtroom watches the CCTV of Autumn's last day.
For me, when you saw her start out that morning, you can see her striding into work. Her hair is down. She looks kind of ready to seize the day. And by the end of the night, 14 or 15 hours later, her hair was in a ponytail. She looked tired. She had her bag on her shoulder. Her day was like everybody else's, right? And to see that and know that those were, among her last moments was really very difficult to watch.
Over 40 witnesses take the stand to piece together the case for the jury.
The biggest moment of the trial was when the defense said they called Bob Ferrante to the stand. He sounded completely different than he had in the 911 call. The tone of his voice was different. The pitch of his voice was different. And to see him up on the witness stand acting kind of charming and trying to present the relationship that he and Autumn had in the way that he wanted to, it was really striking.
He was the controlling personality from the very beginning. When he found out that she was even thinking of leaving him, he decided how she was going to be punished for that. He decided that she was going to die. He decided how he was going to get away with it. He decided how he was going to control the medical professionals, the criminal justice professionals. It was very well set up to be able to get away with this murder.
The jury retires. After 15 hours, they find Ferrante guilty of first-degree murder. He is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
It's interesting, a lot of people say you never know what goes on behind closed doors. On the surface, this relationship seemed like a very normal family relationship. Behind the scenes, it was clearly a very toxic marriage. It's very clear that she was a highly esteemed woman, very ambitious, a mother, and knew a lot around females and women's pregnancies.
The thing that sticks with me is what was lost in Autumn's death. Not only was she an incredible mom and a good friend and colleague and daughter and cousin, her life's work was to help people. And you just think to yourself, what might have been had she not died? What might have been if she was able to continue on for the next 20 or 30 years of her career? How many lives she might have been able to change? And that is incredibly heartbreaking.